Welcome to the Quiverful Adoptions podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey. We are two adoptive mamas who have walked in your shoes, so we get it.
We remember the crazy journey of adoption like it was yesterday, and we are so thankful we get to share some amazing stories with you right here from the living room of our office.
Well, actually, we're sitting in the bathroom, but the living room does sound better.
Anyway, none of that matters. We're glad you're here.
So grab a cup of coffee and join us as we dive right in.
Hey guys.
Hey friends, so glad you joined us today.
Yes, today we are talking to Hannah from Kindred & Co. and we are so excited for you guys to listen to this podcast.
So Elizabeth, what's the one thing that you did in your profile book when you were on your adoption journey that you kind of regret or you wish you could change now?
Well, I wrote a Dear Birth Mom letter, which essentially was terrible. It was filled with the wrong language, terminology. It was more about us than about her. That was 5 years ago. So I've learned a lot since then. But I think that that's the number one thing I would completely delete and start over and obviously write to an expectant mother rather than a birth mother.
Yeah, I think that when you know better, you do better. And that it's so funny. Alame found my book the other day and we were reading it together. And the whole time I was like, oh, cringe. This is so bad. I did the same thing. Yeah. And the other thing that I wish I would have done more of would be just showing more of our personality. I made it so sterile almost.
Right. So stock. And back then, all adoption profiles looked the same. And now, man, you can... when you work with professionals like Hannah, you can get into even the font color and just the overall feel of the book feels like you, as well as getting the advice of a birth mother who can read over your written content and say, don't say this and say this. And so super helpful things that are out there now that weren't when we adopted.
Yeah, Shutterfly was our friend back then.
Way to go. I know.
Hey, that was a thing of the past. So tell us a little bit about Hannah.
So Hannah lives in Chicago, but she is a desert girl at heart with her husband, twin girls, Ezra and Olive. She loves queso dip a little too much. A photographer, designer, and creative, Hannah is passionate about adoption, and through her own adoption process, she found her people. After 10 years in nonprofit marketing and design, she started Kindred & Co. to form a community and give others something she desperately wishes that she had going through the adoption process. Kindred & Co. is a brave adoption community that lifts up all voices in the adoption triad. Kindred believes that sharing stories is a powerful way to show both the beauty and the brokenness of adoption. We believe that we can learn from each other's experiences and handle each other's stories with care. Kindred & Co. creates modern, photo-focused profile books that have a lot of heart. Their custom profile books and profile book templates help families and hopeful adoptive parents tell their story in a way that connects with expectant moms considering adoption for their child. Kindred & Co. was the first profile book provider to have a birth mom on their team that coaches clients on how to write the difficult hello letter to expectant parents. That's the letter I was talking about. Their books are to sit knee to knee with expectant moms considering adoption, talking with them, not at them.
I love that.
I do too.
I wish this service would have been around 5 years ago.
I know, for real. We love Hannah. We love her blog over at Kindred & Co. And I think that you guys are going to learn a lot from her podcast today.
Hey, friends.
Hey, guys.
So glad you came today.
Hannah, thank you for being on the podcast today.
I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Is it cold and rainy up there?
It's freezing, and currently my mom is visiting from Arizona, and so she is having a rough go this week. It's supposed to warm up by the weekend, though, so we are counting down the days.
That's awesome. So our weekend was beautiful and sunny and 75, but they're calling for snow tomorrow. So
yeah,
we never know.
I live in Colorado, and that's how it was like there. Like one day snowing, next day 80. It made no sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, Hannah, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your story?
This is always the first question. It's like, okay, I'm sure everyone feels this way, but like, where do you begin on your story? There's many complexities and moving parts, but just a little about myself. Me and my husband, Josh, we live in Chicago. We have twin girls, Ezra and Olive. They will be 3 next month, which is insane. We have a cute golden doodle that used to star in our Instagram, and she's been booted because of the girls, unfortunately. But yeah, we've been together almost 9 years. Our story's a little different. We always knew we wanted to adopt. That was some of the first conversations we had when we were dating. I will never forget telling Josh, you have to be willing to adopt or at least move to Africa someday if we're going to keep this going. And he was like, sounds great. And looking back, I'm sure he was more like, I want to keep dating. We'll talk about those things later. But somehow it all worked out, and we dated in college. We ended up moving to Colorado because I got a job right out of college for a global orphan care organization. Before college, all I wanted to do was be a mom. I wanted to be a teacher because I thought that was the best thing to be when you're a mom. I don't know. And then I went on this trip to Zambia my junior year, and it totally wrecked me. I came home a mess and really wanted to change a lot of things that I knew up until that point in my life. The first day of my senior year, I spent not going to any of my education classes and running around trying to figure out how to pick up another degree. I realized it was too late to back down on education, so I finished my education degree, but I picked up a nonprofit management degree, and that's what kind of led to me working for this global orphan care organization for almost 9 years. I was the marketing director and creative director, and I was traveling a ton. Like, I got to go to Guatemala and Swaziland and Ethiopia and Uganda and all over the world, and I came alive there. I loved it. And so I started questioning, like, what does motherhood look like for me now? I really love Josh and I's life of freedom and no kids and traveling. And so we were just having a bunch of conversations about what does life look like for us. And I felt so much pressure to have biological kids first and adopt later. That was kind of the story I saw in the narrative. And yet for us, every time we would talk about having biological kids, it was a really draining and frustrating conversation. And I know this is not how other people feel. And so I felt really isolated in that. And so, but then we would always come back to adoption. And when we talk about adoption, we could talk about it for hours and be excited and imagine what our family would look like. And so there was finally a moment, I think like 5 years into marriage, we started feeling like something new was coming, whether that was a move or a new job or time to grow our family. And so we were praying about it and pulling things apart. And I think finally Josh said, Hannah, our family can look like whatever we want it to look like. There's no rule book for this. And like, as soon as we let go of these societal pressures that we were putting on ourselves, we were so excited to move forward, building a family, becoming parents, and doing that through adoption. We were at a Johnny Swim concert, and we had been leading up to this, we had been feeling like it was time to start growing our family. They were singing, and she started singing the words, I don't know what's coming, but it's going to be good. And she kept singing it over and over again. And it was like this crazy powerful moment where Josh and I both started bawling. We didn't talk, and we both didn't know what each other were crying about, but we got in the car afterwards and we're like, what was that? And it just was this intense moment that we felt like we needed to start our adoption. But we didn't fully like say that. Like, we just were on the same page. It was this weird marriage moment. So the next day we were driving, and I like sheepishly sunk down in my chair. I will never forget it. I remember like what intersection we were at. And I looked out the window and I said, hey babe, when should we start our adoption? And I thought for sure he'd say, when I'm done with medical school, when we have more money. Like, there's so many things he could have said in that moment. And he smiled real big and he said, ready when you are. And I like lost it. I was like not expecting it. But again, it was just this electric moment that I think we started like researching or starting the process the next day. Come to find out much later, that I'll get to, that our girl's due date was exactly 9 days from that 9 months from that conversation. Wow. And so we felt this intensity that we had to start. I don't know what it was, but we felt like we had to start then in order to connect with whoever we were supposed to connect with. And so we kind of jumped in. But the thing was, we always thought we were going to adopt internationally. That was kind of the world I was in. I had so many coworkers that had adopted internationally. And that's just what I was familiar with. But Josh was in medical school and so much was happening, international adoption. And we just didn't feel like that was what we were supposed to do anymore. And so again, Josh was the one to say, like, I think we should do domestic adoption. And it really caught me off guard because I knew absolutely nothing about it. Nothing. And I'm a researcher and I like to know things before I start. And so I just took to Google and started reading about it and learning about open adoption. And that really excited me to be part of Birth Mom Story, not just Child Story. But again, we knew very little about what this process looks like and how you actually go about it. So we started our process. And again, there was this big mind shift change. Like I remember even thinking, our child's not going to be an orphan. Like this picture I had in my mind of what our adoption and our family would look like is no longer the narrative with domestic adoption. Our child's going to be going from one mom's loving arms to another mom's loving arms. And so it shows me now like how far I've come in learning about domestic adoption from where I started. So we started the process and I felt this deep need for community. I felt so in the dark about how to do this thing. Meanwhile, Josh was joking / not joking at all the whole time that he wanted twins. I thought he was insane.
Never happens.
Exactly. I come from a really big family and we're really spread out. So my brother is 10 years older than me and we are so close. And so in my head, I was on this one kid every 10-year plan and that was going to be great. And so we're going along and like, you know how like you want to set up a registry, but you have to put in a due date and you're like, I don't have a due date. I'm doing adoption. And so when we would go to like register for things, I would pick out this like super minimal European single seater. And Josh would come up with this huge 2-seater, does every trick in the world. I'm like, babe, we don't need that. And he's like, yes, we do, because we're going to get twins. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I kept laughing, but he just must have known. I don't know. At this point, we were waiting for a while. And believe me, this is not the traditional way that people get chosen or matched. But this post came up on my Facebook about twins that were in Utah. And so I tagged Josh in it as a kind of a joke because it said you had to live in Utah to apply. And so I'll never forget, I tagged his name and I did a little winky face and it was kind of like, here's some twins, but they can't be ours because we live in Chicago and these babies are in Utah. And he came in the door that night from work and he was like, why don't you just call the agency and see if we can apply from out of state? And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. Okay. So we called and it was hard to get through because when you put Slay on Facebook, you get all these people that aren't home study ready and they just say like, I'll take babies. Right. And so we heard that we could apply as long as we could potentially stay for a long NICU stay. We went to bed that night and we were so stressed. And I texted a friend that had 2 sets of twins and I'll never forget what she said. She said, sometimes we have to toss the coin and let God choose how it lands. And Josh was already asleep by this point. So I couldn't I'm a talker. I couldn't talk out loud. And he went on a walk in the morning and had some kind of moment himself and came back. And we both just felt like we needed to overnight our book to this situation. And we kind of felt like if we get a no, we'll just know it's not our story. Like if we don't do it, we'll always wonder. And at that point, like so many things had to go right and doors had to open for it to be us. And so we would know it was kind of meant to be. So we took this risk. We sent our book. Meanwhile, Josh is now in residency, but at that point he was in medical school and he only had 2 weeks off during the whole year. And so the whole time we had been praying and hoping that something would happen during these random 2 weeks off that he had in April. And this was the beginning of April. And we heard that after like a week, I think it was the longest week ever, we heard that she wanted to talk to us and a few other families. We got on the phone and it was just this amazing conversation. We talked for 2 hours. She asked us the most thoughtful questions and all these, I wish I had time to like go into all the stories, but all these things like aligned. And at the end, we just heard the words that I'm confident I want you guys to be the girls' parents. And we cried our eyes out and we called friends and family. And she was supposed to deliver maybe like 20 days later, but the C-section got moved up. So we had 10 days to get ready for twins, to figure out how to get there, to make plans. And it just so happened that like Josh took this huge med school test. It's like the big one you take to get into residency on that Friday. We flew there Saturday. We had Sunday together. And then the girls were born the first Monday morning of his 2 weeks off that we had been hoping and praying for the whole time.
Wow.
So it was insane. It was so crazy. Yeah. And then I was trying to have really loose expectations about what that hospital experience would be like. And the girl's birth mom invited me in and I got to hold her hand while the girls were delivered. And I looked over at her and said, like, you're my hero. And she looked at me and said, no, you're mine. And we just had these like precious moments that I will never forget. And even in the moment, I didn't realize how powerful it was going to be for us to be welcoming our girls to the world together. Like, I love that now I get to tell the girls that like both of your moms who love you so much were there welcoming you to this world. And it caught me off guard because those days in the hospital, she was by herself. And so I wanted to be next to her. But when I was with her, I was worried about the girls. And when I was with the girls, I was worried about her. And so I wrote this blog post about like this split room experience that I had to be in two places. And I guess I wasn't expecting that. Like, I loved seeing my girls and like I look back on that fondly, but like the moments in the hospital that really mean the most to me are those moments that I got with her, because those are the only moments I've had with her to date. Yeah. I'm so grateful for our twins, and never thought I'd be a twin mom, but here I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a twin mom too, and it's insane.
It's insane. Everyone's asking these questions about like anything about them. I'm like, I don't remember. Like the first year is all a blur. I don't know.
Yeah. We've got ours when they were 3. And so that was really hard, you know? I think that it would have maybe been easier if we would have got them as newborns, because you adjust, you know, like as it's going, but we're just kind of thrown into it. So it was fun.
People always say, how do you do it? I'm like, I don't know. You just do it. And honestly, I think there's like a secret that like twins are actually, I don't know, to me maybe easier than just having one, because like they play together. Like I could put them on the floor and they'd be content, and like after nap time they talk for an hour to each other and like, back and forth, and I'm like, okay, you guys are good. I'm gonna finish drinking. I'll take a moment to myself. So yeah, they're so fun.
If you're currently in an open adoption or hope to be in the future, Adopt Connect was created for you. AdoptConnect.com is a new website dedicated to streamlining post-placement communication between adoptive parents and birth parents. By leveraging current technology, Adopt Connect eliminates the worry over Facebook security, returned mail, lost devices, and ever-changing email addresses. Adoptive parents upload photos, videos, and updates, and Adopt Connect stores them safely and securely on a private timeline until birth parents are ready to access. Adopt Connect sends reminders to adoptive parents when their updates are coming due and lets birth parents know when something new has been posted to their timeline. One of our favorite things about Adopt Connect is that with each new subscription, a donation is made to adoptive parent and birth parent support groups across the country. Visit AdoptConnect.com to sign up today. So at what point did you decide to start Kindred & Co.?
So I know I kind of left that part out while I was going through the story, but okay. Going back to our adoption process, again, I felt so in the dark about domestic adoption. I was desperately searching for stories that had gone before me. I wanted it because I didn't know anything about domestic adoption. I wanted to hear from transracial adoptees. I wanted to hear from birth moms. I wanted one place I could go to read story after story. And while I felt like there was some community within which agency we're using, I wanted one place for everyone to like gather and learn from each other, and I couldn't find it. And so I think coming from a marketing director background, my marketing brain was in like high alert during the domestic adoption process. And it was just like looking for gaps that I could help fill. So the first one I saw was this need for community and this need to lift voices up that were sometimes hidden. So at that, I mean, this was only 3 years ago, but things have changed so much. Like there was no Instagram Live, there was no Instagram stories, there was no Facebook Live. Like the other voices, the birth moms, the adoptees, those voices were hard to find. I remember laying in bed listening on Periscope to a birth mom, crying my eyes out. Probably no one even knows what Periscope is, but yes, those you had to dig to find them. And I wanted them to be more readily available and accessible to people. And so the first thing I noticed was this deep need for community. I wanted to meet other adoptive moms that were going through this with me. And then I wanted to learn from others that had done this before me. And then as I continued through the domestic adoption process, they told you have to make a profile book. And I, again, had no idea the profile book was even part of the process. I had a background in design, so I thought it sounded fun. I remember working all day at my job and then coming home and working till like 3 a.m. on my profile book. And I was just sharing online what I was doing. Never even thought about making it a business at that point, but I got inundated with, how did you do that? Where'd you print it? Could you help me with mine? From multiple strangers on the internet. And it caught me off guard. And I started researching, like, I thought agencies were like helping people do this hard thing and this really important piece of the puzzle. Come to find out now, I've been doing this for a while. A lot of them give you a page that says, do this and don't do that, and you're on your own. Go figure it out. And so I felt so bad for the couple or the single mama that is either parenting or so busy with home study paperwork or has a full-time job, and then they also have to do this big, intimidating thing. And then if it's not in your wheelhouse, how even more frustrating that must be. And so I started looking to see if there was any other companies doing this. And at that time, I could only find one other one. And while it was great, it was just such a different look than I wanted. I wanted something that felt like an extension of me, and that is really clean and modern and kind of Scandinavian looking. Like, I don't know. I just had a different look in my mind of what I wanted my book to look like. And so I was kind of thinking, like, if I want this, maybe some other people want this too. And then continuing to move forward, we got matched with an agency that was a little difficult, and we had to ask some really hard questions and never really got a bunch of answers that we were looking for, and didn't know the things that we should be asking ahead of time. And so when the girls got home, I think it gave me even more fire in some ways to like bring these things together and help people do domestic adoption better than I did. And so a lot of it is giving, like, to me, it's like giving something to someone else that I so wish I would have had. And so I got home and I couldn't lose the thought of these things. One, to educate people on how to do it better, to build community where we can all come to the table and be heard and share our stories. And then also to help people with this intimidating profile book that I thoroughly enjoy doing. And so I think the girls were about 3 months old when I officially started Kindred, and I was still working full time. So life was crazy with 2 brand new twins, or 2 brand new girls, and a full-time job, and starting this new little creative endeavor. And I think I got halfway through my first book for someone and realized, like, I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but I'm not a birth mom and I don't know what that's like. And so I reached out to Ashley Mitchell, who runs Lifetime Healing, and I felt like this little person going up to a big person and saying, I know this is a crazy idea, but I have this idea to make profile books for people, and I want it to be about much more than a profile book. I want there to be education, and I want them to learn from a birth mom on how to like speak to them and sit knee to knee with them. And would you ever, I don't even think I finished my sentence. She's like, I'm in. Like, this needs to happen. This hasn't happened to this point. There was no other profile providers that had a birth mom on their team. And so we really paved a way for something brand new in this field.
What would you say makes you different from the other profile designers out there?
Yeah, so a little, I call them microbrews, but a bunch of other microbrews have been popping up, and it's been so fun to see all these new options for people, because the book should truly feel like you. And so you should pick someone that like designs that you feel connected to. So I think there's a few things that set Kindred apart. Obviously, I am partial. This is like my third baby in some ways. One is that it comes with this community that you automatically get plugged into. I just finished a Kindred call before this, and she said she's learned so much more through our blogs and our phone calls than she did in all of her required home study requirements. And so you kind of get this built-in community that comes around you and supports you. And a lot of our clients are working with consultant groups or like aren't paired with an agency until much later. And so there's so much time to start preparing and learning. And we can start doing that now with the profile book, through the profile book. So it comes with the built-in community. We have an amazing birth mom on our team that spends hours with each of our clients. She does an hour-long phone call. They follow up once they get matched and have more questions. It's kind of a lifelong relationship. Like, as soon as our profile book's done, we don't stop talking to you. Like, we are there for you through your whole process to have your back and help you when you run into more questions. Like, sometimes you don't know all the questions asked in the beginning, but you do once you get matched or have questions about the hospital visit or the first time meeting. And we're there to help you through all that. The other things are simpler, but like, I love to talk, but I have a hard time writing and finding the words to express what I'm saying. And so I knew I wanted to provide a copywriter to our clients. And so they write a questionnaire all about them, tell us all about you, but it can be really like sloppy and throw everything in there. And then we really get to know you and write all the copy for your book based off your tone and your stories. So it still sounds like you, but it's sometimes we don't know which parts of our own story to like highlight. And sometimes it helps a third person kind of coming in and saying like, these are the themes I keep hearing from you. So we want to make sure to include those. And It kind of just takes a weight off of trying to come up with the right words. And some people love to write, and so we have an option for them that's like template where they get to write their own copy. But a lot of our clients choose our custom book because of the copywriting that comes with it as well. And then honestly, I just love doing things with excellence. So like we make sure that our books are what they call perfect bound. So they're bound like a book instead of staple bound. And the beauty of the custom book package is like we go back and forth until like you are completely happy with it. Like if you get a first mock and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like me, we get to like edit it until it feels exactly like you. So it's really hands-on and really customizable. And our goal is to make it feel like an extension of you, something that you can feel confident in. The no's are always hard and they're going to be hard, but I think they're harder when you don't like your book and don't feel connected to your book, because then you start beating up your book and yourself. So my job, like your book does not need to be perfect. I tell that to all my clients. It does not need to be perfect, but it needs to be authentic and it needs to feel like you and feel like you put yourself out there the best that you can. So yeah, there's so many good parts of Kindred.
That's awesome. So I love the fact that you guys spend so much time with the people that you work with, and not just time designing the book, but time educating them. And I think that is really where your true value lies, because your books are beautiful, but the depth of the value comes with the education and the relationship that you guys are creating in the community, like you mentioned. So we love that about you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hannah, what do you think is like the area that most families need the most help with when they come to you with a book?
Great question. People honestly come to us really intimidated. They don't know where to start. And so any little guidance kind of helps in general, but they really feel they either don't have photos, or they don't know which photos to pick, or they don't know which parts of their story about infertility to like share. It's a hard book to make all about yourself. Yeah. And so one thing we always tell people is to like choose pictures that once you look at, they tell a story. I think a lot of times we get caught up making this book for ourselves when really we're making it for her. And so like, I remember on my family page, I felt like I needed to make sure every family member was in there so no one got their feelings hurt, and the only picture I have of everyone is everyone smiling at the camera from a wedding. And so I have to use that one so that everyone gets in the book. Like I hear this often, but I would rather see pictures of your family doing what you love to do as a family. Show insight into what your family does together, whether that's you love to like every year you go on this like boat vacation, or you guys love to go to Disneyland, or you have this special feast you guys make every holiday. Like show that tells a story and shows what life is like, more than making sure that every person got on the family page. Pick pictures that tell stories. And with that, write words. Instead of just saying like, we love pancakes, tell a story about like how your grandma passed down this Swedish pancake recipe and you make it every other Saturday for your kids. Like, I think anything that you can do to tell a story versus just making a statement makes your book come more alive.
I love that.
I think our clients are so great at coming in open-minded and open-hearted and saying like, what do I need to learn about meeting an expectant mom where she's at? Yeah. I think a lot of times we think we know what we should say. And those are things like, you know, you're so brave and so selfless. And those sound so great. And it's like, I think the first thing we think we should do in a profile book, but sometimes it's not the right time to say it. And that doesn't mean it's never the right time. Like you will have more opportunities, especially if she picks you, to have those conversations. But in especially the hello note, it's really meeting her where she's at and saying, I see you. No matter what choice you make, I support you. You're the mother. It's recognizing her. And I think we can all think of those moments in our life where life was hard and someone said something to us quick and cliche and it hurt. And so in that moment, she is not feeling like the most selfless or the most brave person. She is feeling terrible about the choices she's made and the choice that she has to make looming coming in front of her. So yeah, I guess that's why there's so many layers to a profile book. And that's why we are here to like walk you through it. Because I think it can be hard to navigate all that on your own.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, we love the fact that you guys try so hard to make sure that a family story goes beyond what you see in the book, but is what is felt as you're reading the book. I feel like when you're looking through one of Kindred's books, you can really just get an overall feel for the family as opposed to just reading facts or, like you mentioned, seeing pictures of just family members all staring at the camera. So we love that. That's awesome.
Exactly. I think when I was before Kindred started, I was researching if there was any other profile book providers, and I saw so many books that were all just fun facts. And I was like, I don't know if the expectant mom really wants to know that I like pizza. Like, I just thought she would want to know so much more of my heart and what I'm about than my favorite movie. So we really try to like balance between those fun things that make you you, but also really share your heart about who you are.
Your story matters. Creating your adoption profile book is one of the most important aspects of your adoption journey. It is the first and usually only opportunity for you to share your story with a potential expectant family, and Arrow and Root is here to help make that process as easy as possible. Having a professionally designed profile book that is expectant parent focused will help you stand out and bring you comfort in knowing your book communicates who you are as a family in the best way possible. Allow Arrow and Root to help you make a great and lasting first impression. It means everything. So kind of switching gears now, what is one piece of advice that you would give hopeful adoptive families in regards to adoption? So not from Kindred's perspective, but just as a mom, as an adoptive mom, what would you give families walking into adoption?
I love this question. I always tell people to not let fear win. This was something I repeated our whole adoption because had I let fear win, I would not have the wonderful things that are in my life now. We can be so scared of open adoption, domestic adoption, what it's like to be in a hospital and share motherhood with expectant mom and birth mom, drug exposure, adopting an older child, so many things. And not to say that you shouldn't really think about what you're willing to take on, but I think sometimes we let fear win too quickly before pulling things apart and really praying about it. And I don't know, I'm so glad I didn't let fear stop me on a lot of the things going through the domestic adoption process. I definitely would not have my twins.
So, Hannah, you guys adopted transracially. What are a few key things that hopeful adoptive families should consider when thinking about adopting transracially?
We did adopt transracially, and this has been something that I have been thinking a lot about recently and do not have all the answers for. So take it as it is. But there is a lot to think about before adopting transracially. I felt like I was really prepared to do so, especially coming from I always thought we'd adopt internationally. And so we always just pictured our family as a transracial family. We live in a very diverse city. We went to a college that was in the most diverse zip code in the US. We took a lot of classes on racial reconciliation. I think we felt like we were more prepared than maybe some to adopt transracially. And yet, out of anything in our adoption process and becoming a mom, this is what has wrecked me the most. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anything can truly prepare you for the emotions that you will experience becoming a transracial family. And so I think it's something really to consider. I've gotten asked by a family that lives in really rural America and has no people of color in their town, and they ask if they should adopt transracially. And I think that's something that really has to be considered. You realize once these babies are in your arms that you want to give them the world. And part of that responsibility is making sure they have mirrors in their life that look like them. And to be honest, once the girls came home, I spent so many nights crying over them, wondering if they'd be better off in a Black family, because it felt like there was this weight of even if I do the checklist, even if we're committed to living in a diverse city, we drive across town to make sure they see Black doctors. We have people around our table that look different than us. We value diversity. We bring culture and music into their lives. We learn how to do their hair well so that they can do their hair. There's all these things that we strive to do for them. But it just felt like no matter if we did all those things, there was this huge gap in we will never be able to provide the full richness of what it'd be like to grow up in Black culture. And so I hate that there's a loss I always cry talking about this, a loss there for them. And so I didn't have an answer for that recently. Like, this truly is something I've been struggling with and wondering until a few weeks ago. I was at a adoption conference, and a wonderful woman named Pamela Cook, she's awesome, you should follow on Instagram. She's a transracial adoptee, and she was sharing her story of growing up in all white Kansas. She only saw one Black person come into her home her whole life. And hearing her story wrecked me, even though she has a wonderful relationship with her family and speaks so highly of them, but also talked about the struggles with feeling like her race was never talked about, or it was hard to figure out that part of her identity. And so at the end, I was so scared to raise my hand, but I raised my hand and said, as a transracial adoptee who grew up with these things not being highlighted in your own life, do you think Black babies are better off with Black families? And that's a very hard question to ask in front of a bunch of people. Yeah. And she answered, basically she said no, but later I was sitting next to her and explained more that there's this richness I feel like I will never be able to provide them. And it will forever be etched in my mind. But she grabbed my knee and she looked at me and she said, Hannah, you get to fill that gap with your own richness. And it wrecked me. And it finally gave me a little bit of, it was hard to not reject it right away, honestly, because it feels like I'll just never be enough. But I'm trying to trust that it could be true, and that my girls will get to experience all these things that we are devoted to putting into their life, and the richness that Josh and I and our families bring as well. We have a blog on Kindred that a mom that is adopted transracially as well talked about how kids that grow up in transracial families kind of have this like superhero power of getting to like be in both worlds and do that well. And so I've been learning a lot about it, and it's been a hard process for me, because I think all moms, no matter if you've adopted transracially or not, you look down at your babies and you want to give them everything, and you realize there's some things that you just won't ever be for them. So yeah, there's a lot to think about before adopting transracially. I think the big things are you willing to move or make life sacrifices so your kid can be surrounded by other people that look like them and not be the only Black kid in their class, or go to parks that they can make friends that look like them.
Absolutely. I mean, I love what she said, because it's powerful, and I think it's universal. I think that, I don't have transracial. I mean, I didn't adopt transracially, but there are certainly times where I doubt my impact as an adoptive mom, or I think, what are their questions going to look like when they get bigger and they ask, whether they verbalize it or not, they start asking, what would my life have been like if I had been raised by my birth mom and stuff like that. And so I think there's definitely ways where we, as adoptive moms, universally feel inadequate in many, many ways. But I think that what you shared today is sure to encourage somebody that's listening in that has adopted transracially and feels the exact same way that you have. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. I know after I asked that question to her, I had probably 2 or 3 people come up and say, like, I was dying to ask that and I was too scared. Yeah. So I asked it for us all us transracial mamas out there.
Yes. So how long have you been doing Kindred & Co. now?
Good question. So I started right when the girls were born, but again, was still working full time. So things got super busy with Kindred this past year, which has been so exciting and life-giving. And so honestly, I think a mix of it was just like poor self-care and like trying to do too much of like scheduling babysitters every day and working full-time meetings all day and trying to do Kindred. At 5:00, I was crying, just stressed and done. And so this past summer, I knew something needed to change. And I was so scared to take a jump with Kindred because it's leaving a sustainable income, a check that is going to come. But I just knew I had so many big dreams for Kindred, and I couldn't do it when I had so much other things going in my life, and I needed to make room for it to grow. And so we decided for me to leave my job this past summer. And so I've only been full-time with Kindred, 6 months or so. It'll be our 3-year anniversary coming this August. So it's been such a good season of life to be home with my girls and doing something that I could just do all day, every day.
That's
So
awesome.
fun.
I didn't realize that you weren't full time already. That's something that I remember when we decided to take Quiverful and do it full time. I remember Casey jumped super fast. She was like ready to go. And I had so much hesitation because of the, leaving the reliable income, that I knew was going to be there. And I don't know, there's just so many unknowns, but so I can relate to that. It's a very scary leap.
I called my sister and she said, where God guides, he provides. And she said, Hannah, you are so ready for this. It's obvious. And so she was the one that really said, it's time. And I needed someone to tell me that. But all that to say, I was terrified, so scared. Yeah. And then I think the more we do scary things, the easier they become. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyone that's wanting to take that risk, I so encourage it now. I can't imagine not doing it now. And it's been, God's provided. It's been busy and fun. And now we're building retreats and conferences. And there's just so much still to come that I'm so excited about.
That's awesome.
So over the past few months, as you've been building Kindred & Co., what has been your favorite blog post so far?
Oh, man. We have such a great group of writers and guest bloggers. I get sent the blog early and they all wreck me. And that's something, when I, again, started Kindred, I think I mentioned earlier, I don't love writing. I'm very scared of writing. And so I knew if I wanted to do this, because I wanted to have tons of different perspectives, it can't just be me putting out content. And so we just have such an amazing group of writers that each blog I get just blows me away by their perspective and their unique story, and that they're willing to over and over again share deep parts of their life. But the first thing that comes to mind, it's so hard to pick though, is one called We Are Motherhood that Christina Vance wrote for Mother's Day a couple years ago. And it just, although Kindred is open to all, male and female, there's something beautiful to me about moms coming together. And I think I especially have a heart for women. And this blog just captured a lot of the heart of Kindred, that no matter how we come to motherhood, it looks so different for all of us. And yet each of our stories carry this level of beauty and brokenness. And we don't get to use this card that says my life's harder than yours, or I went through something harder than yours. We all come to the table and get to share these stories of highs and lows and get to say, I see you, we are all mothers together. And so I will read you a little bit of this post because I just think it was so beautiful. But she wrote, motherhood is a positive pregnancy test, a swelling belly, a grainy black and white ultrasound picture taped to the refrigerator. It's a newborn's first cries and nursing a baby. Motherhood is a stack of paperwork, signed documents, and background checks. It's having a social worker in your home, getting physicals and selling t-shirts to fundraise. It's waiting, it's hoping, it's praying. Motherhood is waiting expectantly for your due date and watch it pass with empty arms. It's folding up tiny onesies, washed in blankets, and tucking them away. It's waves of loss that wash over you and threaten to hold you under. And it's the hope that rises as you push forward. Motherhood is meeting your son when he's 3 days old. It's the smell of his newborn skin and the softness of his dark silken hair. It's your heart whispering, there you are, I've been waiting for you. Motherhood is the first glimpse of your daughter's face thousands of miles away. It's the tear-soaked photo you tucked into the visor of your car and carry it with you. It's crossing an ocean and an unspoken number of obstacles to finally hold her in your arms. Motherhood is the hope that this will be the month. It's another $20 spent on a test, and it's the hope that lingers after bitter disappointment has worn off. Motherhood is sitting through that baby shower and celebrating with your mama friends. It's bathroom floor behind closed doors sobbing. It's waiting for your turn. Motherhood is loving your baby more than yourself. It's choosing his life, feeling his first kicks and hiccups. It's handing him to his forever mama. It's saying goodbye.
That is
wow. You can't get through that blog.
Wow. That's incredible. And we'll link the whole blog post in the show notes so that our listeners can go read the whole thing. But man, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's still, I haven't read it for a year, but it still obviously wrecks me. But I just think there's so much beauty in sharing our story. And again, there's just so much beauty and brokenness that we all come to the table with, and something so powerful when women come together and say, I see you. And although I might not have walked the same path as you, I'm for you. So I just thought it really captured the essence of what Kindred is all about, especially.
Man, I love that. Hannah, thank you so much just for the work that you're continuing to do, the unity that you're curating in this adoption community. And I don't know, we love you. We've loved you since
I love you guys.
we first met you virtually. And we're really just excited to see what Kindred & Co. does in the next year.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you having me. This was so fun. And sorry, I always cry.
No, please cry. Please cry. Thank you so much for just being willing to chat with us today. I know that your story and the things that you shared today will be an encouragement to our listeners. So we just thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So how can people find you on social media?
Oh, come hang out with us. We would love to have you. Instagram's our main jam, but we're on Facebook too. But our Instagram handle is kindredand.co. The Kindred and Co stands for community. So our Facebook page, I think you have to look up Kindred and Community, or maybe Kindred and Co works. I don't know. You'll have to try it. But yeah, we post weekly blog posts. We're starting a new series called Pass the Mic, where we'll be highlighting adoptee and birth mom stories. So yeah, we would love to have you come learn with us.
That's awesome. And you have a website too, right?
Yes, it's also kindredand.co.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you, girls.
Have you heard about the Promise Summit? If you are out there and you're listening right now and you are hoping to adopt, or you're an adoptive parent, or you're struggling with infertility, or maybe you feel called to adoption and you just have no clue where to start, then you need to be at the Promise Summit. Casey, tell us a little bit about what the Promise Summit is.
The Promise Summit is a Christian conference for couples considering adoption, in the wait of adoption, and or families who have adopted. This event is packed with powerful speakers, incredible worship, and a panel that represents all members of the adoption triad, and is sure to be a weekend that you will never forget. Our hope is that you leave the Promise Summit forever changed and armed with the promises from God that will encourage you throughout your entire adoption journey.
The Promise Summit will be held May 3rd and 4th in Greenville, South Carolina, and we would love to meet you there. You can find out more information at thepromisesummit.com or on Instagram at The Promise Summit.
This podcast is produced by Quiverful Adoptions Incorporated. It's edited and formatted by Matt P. with Pinnacle Audio. If you're interested in learning more about Matt and his services, please visit www.pinnacle-audio.com.